Warning: the following program may contain material not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
The borders of space and time have opened once again. And transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
All systems go.
On this episode of Let's Find Out, today we're embarking on a global adventure, diving deep into the fascinating world of dragons, not just as mythical creatures, but as potential players in a much larger, stranger story. While talking ancient myths, modern mysteries, and yes, even UFO connections. Do we have the keys to unlock these mysteries? All this plus more. Please welcome back our good friend and author of the book, Wrath of the Dragons, a global journey through ancient myths, modern mysteries, and UFO connections. Patrick Chouinard, my friend, welcome to Let's Find Out.
Thank you. Pleased to be here.
Man, I'm happy to have you back. And at the time, I don't know if we were just finishing typing out this book, but it came out pretty quickly from our last episode about a month and a half ago. Available now through Zombie Media. And we're going to definitely dive into that. So what have you been doing lately? I know you just released actually 2 books, but what you been going on, man?
Well, I've been just catching up on my current project, Saving Christmas, which deals with both Christian and pre-Christian Christmas traditions and our European American traditions and Christmas as emblematic of Western civilization and Christianity, and why it's important to preserve those traditions as they were meant to be celebrated and embraced, and not watering it down for political correctness purposes.
No, and I can understand that. I remember when I was a lot younger, many years ago, and Christmas felt kind of more important. I'm not gonna use the word magical, but you were always looking forward to Christmas, not just to gifts, but just kind of it was just a nice season, you know. Of course, now it's a little more commercialized. I think it's lost its connection to the original root of the purpose. But I mean, I don't know about you, how you feel about it. What's your opinion on that?
Well, it's like, even when you want to say, well, we can't say Merry Christmas because other people have other holidays in the winter, which is a ridiculous argument when you think about it, because you don't turn. I mean, Jewish people do not feel um like they're slighting someone because they're celebrating Hanukkah as a Jewish holiday. It is a Jewish holiday. Hindu people do not feel that they're slighting someone for celebrating Diwali as a Hindu festival because it's Hindu. Well, Christmas is a Christian holiday with pagan roots and European roots. And if we say Merry Christmas to the majority of people in this country who are Christian, who do have European roots and are part of our Western tradition, we shouldn't be feel bad saying Merry Christmas or putting a nativity scene in the square or having Christmas trees in the middle of Washington, which back in the day President Obama took down, but he put up a menorah. I mean, it was ridiculous. And it's that whole feeling that, oh, we're offending people if we celebrate something which at one time was, exactly as you say, a magical holiday, something that everybody looked forward to and embraced as sacred, as vital to our yearly calendar. And we're just throwing it away because we want to include everyone. If you include everyone, it takes away from that speciality that is Christmas. It is a Christian holiday, it's for Christians. If someone you know is not Christian, you don't have to say happy holidays. If you know that person's a Jew, happy Hanukkah. That's all you have to do. You don't have to you don't have to violate your own boundaries as a Christian or someone who celebrates Christmas to please others. And that is the most ridiculous notion that's come up in our society. You know, there was a Michael Bublé video called It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas, which is a famous song. He's singing the song and he's going from room to room, and it's showing all the different holidays and all the different ways of celebrating it, you know, and gay atheist version of the holiday. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. Has nothing to do with the type of Christmas you saw when I was growing up and you watched John Denver and the Muppets at Christmas Together. That was a beautiful, uh, nostalgic Christmas special for young people. And it ended with a discussion of the Nativity, the birth of Christ. Do you see that on television today? No, you just see some elf or some weird winter figure, some obscure winter figure, and nothing related to what Christmas is really about. And that's just my feeling about it. And I believe it's pivotal to Western civilization. I try to make that message clear throughout that book. And I don't want to get, I mean, I came out with a whole new book, African Genesis, just recently, last couple days, and I know we have a lot to talk about. We've got kind of far off in
No, that's fine.
discussing this, but I wanted to make it clear when that book does come out at Christmas time, exactly what it's about and where I stand on issues like that.
And it's definitely going to be an interesting read in the spirit of in that book. And we're going to get to the new book here in a second. Krampus seems to be taking off like nobody's business and seems to get more popular each year. In your opinion, why do you think that is? Why is Krampus now gaining popularity?
Well, it's interesting. When I was a young boy, and I was about 15, I wrote a story about Krampus because I had researched it in a book that I found when I was a young boy. It was a world book on German Christmas, and it talked about Krampus. And there was also a In Search of Santa Claus, which was on the Disney Channel. It was a uh, a documentary narrated by Peter Ustinov, and he talked about Krampus. So I had some experience even back then with the figure. It's just a really, for the same reason Halloween is popular, it gets you an idea to get out of your box and experiencing something folkish and exciting and where you can masquerade as something else, very much like Halloween. Um, it's an adult event, you know, it's not, Christmas is very much a childhood's uh, festivity, but Krampus is definitely an adult holiday, and it's a European folk festival. It's being celebrated as is, nothing watered down. It's pure the way it's always been celebrated, all the way back to the Middle Ages, with people dressing up. The only difference now is they have more elaborate costumes and technologies to do it. It's very, especially in Europe, it's a very exciting moment. And I think people are really fascinated by the character. He's unique. He's something that's different than has been recognized in the West. But for Central Europeans, it's been pivotal to their yearly celebration for years. It's on the eve of St. Nicholas. And in tradition, Krampus walks around with St. Nicholas, and the good children are rewarded by St. Nicholas, and the bad children are chastised by Krampus.
Now, is that along the lines? I don't know. I was going to say Scandinavian. I might be wrong. Is that where the whole thing with Black Peter came from? He puts kids in a bag,
Well,
and this isn't sent to Spain.
Black Peter is kind of a variation on Krampus. Same thing with in Germany, Knecht Ruprecht is a variation. They have several variations, and they have the Perkind and several different Christmas villains that are well known throughout Central Europe and Germany, in the Alpine area, Bavaria, Holland, Poland, Russia. and it's just throughout that whole area you have variations of the same theme. But yeah, and I wrote about that in a article in the Barnes Review a couple Christmases ago. In fact, I should post it on my website for people to look at. It explains it further. And Krampus is mentioned in this book, Saving Christmas, and in depth. So you will also see it there.
Well, I'm glad I brought up the subject because the holidays are coming. If you're going to put that article up on your website, I would love to read it and learn more about that part of our history and folklore. So now, last time you and we had a conversation, we talked about ancient giants and Nephilim and a lot of things in between as well. Today's topic, we're talking about dragons. Dragons are everywhere, my friend. Children's books, movies. You see people with dragon tattoos, European dragons, Chinese dragons. But why? What is it about these winged, some fire breathing, some are not, that continues to resonate across cultures around for all these centuries?
Well, imagine for a moment that dragons aren't mythology. They're memory, not metaphor, not fantasy, memory. Encoded testimony of something so profound, so technologically advanced, that every civilization on Earth recorded it the only way they could, through myth. And I'm not talking about folklore, I'm talking about a global pattern that archaeology refuses to touch. From Sumer to Shanghai, from the Nile to the north, serpentine forms, atmospheric control, electromagnetic phenomena, and ruins that still register civilization 12 millennia ago. Um, they specify something that is damning to the historical narrative. Um, Tiamat wasn't a chaos goddess, as people think. She commanded storm ships over the Euphrates. Apep was an evil, and Apep is a an Egyptian god. He was the rival faction battling Ra's solar technology in Egypt's skies. And you have the Dragon Kings of China. They didn't symbolize wisdom. They engineered weathering system and crystalline infrastructure. We're only now beginning to detect these things through LiDAR and ground penetrating radar. This isn't fringe theory, it's a pattern of recognition that Orthodox archaeology has systematically ignored because it threatens to destroy their narrative that they've maintained for centuries now.
Well, let's touch on that for a little bit here. It brings me back to reports and documentaries where, in a second, people understand where I'm going with this. Sometimes I get to go off the beaten path. Where, if we're talking about flesh and blood dragons, like animals, or we're talking about, let's say, spirits. And I'm asking because it is a popular theory back when I think it was in the Greeks when they wrote stories about Cyclops. It was there's a theory out there is because they found skulls of elephants, and you know how the elephant skulls in the middle looks like an eye socket. They might think, well, that's where they got the theory of Cyclops. Or if back then someone would have found bones of dinosaurs on the side of a
And
mountain. Yeah.
Adrienne Mayer wrote a book about that. She's a paleontologist and a writer, and she wrote several books on that. I don't agree with that. I think that the origin of these legends is deeper than that. I believe there's real basis in these legends, and that people are seeing or had saw things in the sky that they readily identified as dragons, and that maybe there were in fact dragons in real time. In 2019, it was said that archaeologists excavating near the ancient city of Sipar in Mesopotamia examined a metallic object vertebral in structure, composed of an alloy we cannot replicate, emitting lo- low level radiation consistent of isotopic decay from approximately 10,000 BCE. Not pottery, not copper, something that requires explanations we don't have. So there's real evidence that there is something out there, something more significant than just myth or just misinterpretation.
Well, let's get to that part now with the evidence, where you can piece together a lot of discoveries and come out with a hypothesis of what it could be. With dragons, when we talk about fire breathing dragons, for instance, back in the ancient days, maybe let's just say a UFO starship came across the skies and it uses propulsion like jets, like you see fire or smoke. Maybe that was a misidentification of a UFO, calling it a dragon. Are we kind of along those same lines?
Yeah, that's very possible. I mean, I'm not the first one to come up with that idea. I mean, they talked about it on Ancient Aliens. David Childress mentioned it. And that's kind of the direction I'm going in with this part of my book. But I just don't go there. I mean, in the book, I talk about Loch Ness in Champ in Lake Champlain and the African legends of great beasts that look dinosaur-like or dragon-like. That there was actually cryptids out there that fit the description of dragons and dinosaurs both. And to that extent, I talk about Noah's Ark and how creation scientists have come up with the idea that dragons are simply dinosaurs who, of a different name, so to speak, who were alive in the ark and came out, but later went extinct after being hunted or climate change made them die out. They point out, and quite correctly, that the word dinosaur only began in the 19th century, so that really, in truth, dinosaurs were probably always referred to as dragons. So there's a connection there. Another connection to dragons, of course, is the uh, is the reptoids, the extraterrestrials,
Yeah.
and some of them are seen when people are abducted. They are seen inside the UFO craft, and the Hindus have the legend of the Nagas, which are serpentine-like individuals with supernatural powers. You have the Rakshas. So you have several different serpentine and reptilian-like individuals who are present in Hindu mythology. Um, you have similar stories. You have the Dreamtime serpents in Australian tradition. You have the rainbow serpents who almost do uh, continent-wide terraforming in the legends of Africans, the African rainbow serpents. So you have it worldwide. You have it from the Nile to China, from the Norse traditions of Northern Europe to the tales of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent in Mesoamerica. You have it generally all around the globe, talking about these creatures with great detail. They're almost as prevalent as the flood myths, which also are virtually universal. Another one of these archetypes, like giants. Giants, too, are another of these universal archetypes that we see recurring in mythology the world over.
One part of what I've noticed with dragons, because you mentioned it earlier, different parts of the world, these dragon, I'm gonna use a generic term, had different duties, or they're given attributes for something to do differently. So in case, let me put this in point. Where in Europe a dragon can represent something different. In China, let's say wisdom. Somewhere else could be evil. Is it fair to say that perhaps these dragons are akin, kind of like how angels, or fallen angels, if you want to say, each one of them had their own different ranks and duties in the heavens. Is it similar with dragons?
I've never even gone there. I don't think of them as fallen angels. I think of them as more or less representatives of advanced intelligence from another area of the cosmos, rather than anything religious like a fallen angel or anything like that.
And so, if they come from another cosmos, well, let me backtrack. If you were to do a qualifications, what would mm, constitute something to be a legit dragon? What would that be?
Well, what I would say would be what contributed to the dragon mythology would be misidentified aerial crafts.
Mm.
And I think that that is one of the major precursors to the mythology. Another precursor, I believe, is the reptoids that link to reptilian like uh, uh, intelligences that our species has had encounters with for centuries, I believe. The next thing is could be more or less inspired by dinosaurs and memories or encounters with great creatures um, of that nature. So, in essence, to answer your question, I think it could have come with from multiple angles, not just one. You kind of see what I'm saying? It could have come from misidentified aerial craft. It could have also come from encounters and abductions by reptoids. It could also have come from encounters with cryptoids like Loch Ness Monster or Cham from Lake Champlain or the creatures of the Congo, which native Africans often claim they have encounters with. And so all these combined could help build upon the persistent memory or accounts of dragons worldwide.
And there's something to that. Again, my memory fails me in history. I know there was a point in time where a discovery of the mountain gorilla, where people thought it was a myth and pretend until it was discovered. Was it like in the early 1900s before somebody said that's a legit gorilla?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. They did think it was a myth. And it was quite a surprise when no, it actually came out that it was a legit creature. They also thought the same thing about the panda, that the panda was a myth, that it was merely Chinese folklore, and then they found it, you know. And then you have surviving prehistoric animals like the coelacanths, which we thought was extinct by hundreds of millions of years, but then found out was still alive in the depths of the oceans, which raises the question, could, marine reptiles or even dinosaurs still be alive somewhere in the unknown reaches of this planet?
I think I heard something about maybe in Antarctica, somewhere in the center there, where it might be tropical or something, because they're talking
Well,
about
yeah,
possibly,
it
yeah.
would be geothermal energy beneath the earth there, beneath the ice in caverns, where there's a completely different environment, well down beneath the earth, where it's warm and there could be flourishing ecosystems. And maybe that's really what, Linda Moulton Howe has been talking a lot about, a cover up. That might be the cover up there. There might be some type of base within that type of environment that the government is trying to conceal. Because I can believe that there's an ecosystem there, but I will also believe that there is, that somehow the government would somehow find some way to abuse it or use it for their own purposes, as the government seems to always do.
And it's not just, I guess I'm going to say United States government, but we're talking about worldwide, because out of all the pieces of land in this earth that they don't really squabble around, it's usually Antarctica. They usually have an agreement to where, you know what, let's just not talk about what happens here.
Yeah.
In your opinion, because I know we're talking about ancient stories, centuries, thousands of years old, in today's modern time, if we could all get together and look at an event, and collectively we would all agree that this is a legitimate sighting of a classic dragon, when was the last time something like that has happened in our time?
Well, it hasn't happened in our time. These are ancient traditions. And, um, if we saw a UFO in today's time, most likely most people would say there's a UFO. It's a spacecraft. But take the same people 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, their reaction to it is going to be quite different. They're not going to see it in the context of being a spacecraft because they know nothing about spacecrafts.
Right. So in a way, would it be fair to say that we're all might be talking about the same thing, but
Exactly. And
yeah.
that's the point. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell. Yeah, definitely.
And we touched base earlier, also with an extraterrestrial connection to all of this, talking about the reptilians. Are these the ones that are supposedly living underground on Earth and perhaps stirring things up within our world governments? Or because I know they come from a different star system, but they maybe made their home here on Earth permanent. They never were able to go back.
Well, I talk a little bit about in the book about the theories of David Icke. And, he talks a lot about the conspiracy of the reptoids and that they're integrated, that they're shape shifting, and that they're integrated into our governments. And basically, they're pulling the strings of our governments. I don't know if I agree with that. I'm just like one of the people that finds those types of conspiracy theories to be very wild, even though I will embrace this idea that dragons might be real. I just can't put my mind around this idea that there's this shape-shifting race that controls every aspect of our lives, that we are living into a real life um, example of the movie The Matrix, which I personally don't embrace it. At the same time, in a devil advocate way, I I discussed his theory in one of my chapters and then kind of gave my own take on it.
And I think that's fair to include that in your book, different theories, and maybe you can agree or disagree on it. But every theory, I think, has like I say, a seed of truth in there somewhere. And
Yeah.
it's a matter of us of taking these pieces together and formulated at least
Well,
in
I
the
do
correct.
believe, from reports, and I discussed this, alien abduction reports, that these reptoids have been present at a number of instances, either taking part in biological probing or actually just standing by as Grays performed the probing, and that they're doing the directing or the participation in. So, many people have reported this, just like they've reported the Nordic aliens, with the blonde hair and blue eyes and the Norse look. So you have not just one type of extraterrestrial, but many types.
I can see that too, because the way the ancients drew pictures of them, described them, even though they had the same titles, they all look kind of very different in a way.
Yeah.
So why the topic of dragons? What drew you to that? Because I know you best, and I told you this about 1,000 times. Writing books about giants, And I know you've covered other topics, but why dragons? What interested you in that
Well, I
topic?
wanted to do it. I came up with the idea to write that book back in 2012 after I wrote my Giants book. And it was just something I can't even remember what got me on the topic. I just started researching it. And then I had my real fall in life. And I didn't do anything with that. I mean, George Norrie even invited me back on Coast to Coast to talk about it, an interview which never happened. And so, yeah, I didn't finish it. And then once I recovered, I said, I want to finish this book. So I began doing research and in areas I didn't do the research before. um, my first idea for the book was more based on fossil evidence and misinterpretation of dinosaurs. But I actually decided that I was going to go into a different direction with this book and deal with giants as technological, extraterrestrial, and linked to the reptoids and cryptids such as the Loch Ness Monster and Champ and the creatures of the Congo, so forth and so on. And then, of course, Ancient Aliens also came up with a episode to kind of discuss this. So I kind of based part of my research on that as well. And I just decided to go ahead and finish it up. And I did. And I, yeah, I think it came out pretty good considering how long it took me to get this project complete.
And now that you have the book, and I know people want to read it and download it or get a physical copy, for those that want to look do some independent research in the topic of dragons, where would you point them to as good resource material to at least begin their journey into discovering more information about dragons?
Well, there's a lot of different sources, and the best avenue to start with is in my book because in the back there is a extensive reference list that I have assembled, and it lists all my sources in that reference list. And you'll be able to look it up and just follow my research. And I think that, one of the things that I do quote and do cite the Ancient Aliens episode. And if people wanted to get a good look at that, I mean, David Childress does some extraordinary research, and so does Giorgio Tsoukalos with regards to, you know, the prevalence of dragon legends the world over. And I think there has to be something said of their research. It was really top notch.
And now, me knowing you, because I know you just finished writing this book, which was released and published through Zombie Media. I know you got some plans cooking. What do you got going on, man? You writing something new?
Well, right now I just came out with a book, African Genesis, and it just dropped 2 days ago. And I've got it as an audiobook, as a paperback, and as an ebook. And that just basically is talking about the civilizations of ancient Africa and how Africa really was the cradle of human civilization. And that sometimes through our Eurocentric lens, we tend to disregard these African civilizations and discredit that we owe Africa for the birth of human culture and society, and how they really are behind some of the deepest innovations of humanity that there ever was. And that's basically what this book is about. It's got a foreword by Laird Scranton, who's well known for his books on the Dogon of Mali, uh, which are a ancient society in Africa who basically have traditions of contact with extraterrestrial beings, and supposedly their ancestral teachers from the stars, the Nomo, uh, came from the Sirius star system, and Sirius B, one of the two stars that circle one another, is not visible to the naked eye. But they knew about it long before astronomers on Earth did, which is amazing. We're talking thousands of years before astronomers on Earth did. And so it's very interesting. And I have him as my writer for the forward of that book. And I'm very proud to have him as a contributor.
So 2 books back to back, and you're amazing, my
Well,
friend.
they've been going on for a while there. So, um, and I was already finished looking for a publisher for the Dragons book before I finished up the African book. But yeah, I was working on them back to back.
And now, well, are you going to be doing any lectures or any presentations? Because I know you just released a book about dragons. Are you going to get into that and take it on the road? What are you going to do?
Yeah, I'm gonna be like, I want to go. I'm gonna have a booth at the Harrison Marketplace, the Christmas Marketplace. In January, I'm going to be at the Boone County Library. And then throughout next year, I'm going to be doing a lot of public appearances, like in Springfield at the Writers Guild, at the um, October Writers Conference in Eureka Springs. So I'm going to be taking it on the road, definitely, going all over the Ozarks. I'm trying to concentrate as most as I can on the Ozarks. I have an idea. You asked me if I have any ideas or any prospects for the future, and I think a book on Ozark ghost stories and scary tales would be a good fit for me. So after the Christmas books come out.
See, I knew it, man. You couldn't hide that from me. I know there's something going on with you. But in all seriousness, let me go. Before we go, let me go back a little bit to the dragons. Out of all these dragon stories you've heard, which one's one of your favorite ones? Which ones you find more
Now that's
inspirational?
The Norse of the Midgard serpent, or the world serpent, the one that would circle the world and try to crush it. That Thor eventually is forced to fight to the death in the Ragnarok, as described in the Prose Edda. That really is probably my favorite.
Now, if I believe I remember, didn't he fight that world serpent? But didn't Thor die due to the venom?
He
Did it
did.
bite him?
He did. He did. He died. He did not live that encounter. But in fact, all the gods died except I think they have some children who were able to reemerge and be reincarnated. And Balder becomes reincarnated, but Thor's gone. He's history.
Yeah, I was gonna say Balder. I think it was there were 2 humans in a box or in a chest to survive.
They
Embla.
were in. They were in. They were taking. They were taking salvation in Yggdrasil, the world tree. They were
Ah,
hiding in the tree when it happened because the tree survived the onslaught of the Ragnarok. And then when the Ragnarok was over, they came out to embrace the new world that was created in the wake of the great destruction. And so it was supposed to be a world that was more beautiful than the first one. In a way, we have to question it because it could have been, um, how we say, flavored by Christianity, since Christian monks wrote it down. Or actually, it was Snorri Sturluson, I believe. But Christians wrote it down, and some of that account of Ragnarok is very much like the book of Revelation. So we have to be careful whether some of those sources were peppered by Christianity, but nevertheless, it's still my favorite account of a dragon or a world serpent.
it's one of my favorite stories too. And we can't discount the telling of Ragnarok because every civilization, or I'll say mythology for a lack of a better word, the gods are always fighting.
Yeah.
So it's not too far-fetched to.
I will also say that
Yeah.
Quetzalcoatl could be my second favorite from Mesoamerica. He's often described as a feathered serpent, at other times a Caucasian-like being of great sophistication and power from a faraway land, a great teacher. So I think out of any of them, first the Midgard serpent and then Quetzalcoatl.
And I had that written down here. And I was like, "There's no way in hell I can say that name correctly." But you said it like it's nobody. Like it's so easy for you. But I'm gonna have to take some lessons from you how to pronounce some of these names, especially when it starts with a Q and has a Z. And I can't do it, man. We'll have to talk offline about that. Now, for the listeners of Let's Find Out that they want to learn more about you, of course, where you're going to be this year, your new books, and your future books. Where can they go find out? What websites can they click?
Well, you can go to my you can go to my Facebook. You can go to my Patrick Chouinard. You'll see it there. You can go to my X account. My handle is PCHOUO5, and then or zero. I think it's 005. And then my website www.patrickchouinard.com, and that has all my books listed there that you can purchase.
Awesome, my friend. I really appreciate you returning back to Let's Find Out to discuss the topic of dragons. And I always feel better learned talking to you. And I know I'll probably bring you back a few more times in 2026 because you're going to have a lot of more surprises for us.
Yeah, I'd love to talk a little bit about my next Halloween book, which I kind of am looking forward to next year doing a new Halloween book. So, and I also, another thing too is I'm also seeing that I might want to do a book on spring festivals, like Easter and St. Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's Day. I think that would make a really awesome small book that could really turn some heads. So I'm always coming up with ideas. I could write a book a day, in my opinion. I'm always coming up with something I'd like to do.
I mean,
It's it's a
if you keep,
very relaxing. It's a very relaxing life that I have to get up every day, and all I have to worry about is say, "Hey, look, what do I want to write?"
you keep writing these books, I'm going to bring you every week. So
Yeah, that would be something. It would be my pleasure. It would be my pleasure.
thank you, my friend.
Copyright Diego the Podcaster. All content for Let's Find Out is the property of Diego the Podcaster and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, Diego the Podcaster, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out with Diego is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.